Buenas tardes a todos. It's a pleasure to have you all join the webinar. And I just wanted to say a little bit about Zooming to the Border Collective or Coalition. And we started working together as a group since 2019. Our goal was to highlight and uplift the voices of those leaders who work to uphold the human rights of refugees and migrants in the US-Mexico border communities. At that time, we were planning to have be a car caravan going from town to town and visiting different leaders. But of course, the pandemic happened and then we weren't able to do it. But we continue by organizing webinars, and we called it Zooming to the Border for Human Rights. We are made up of independent media outlets, academics, researchers, people from NGOs, photographers, and others that are committed to bring justice and uphold the human rights of refugees and migrants, as well as the undocumented workers here in the US. Our past webinars can be found on the YouTube channel, Zooming to the Border for Human Rights. And if you want to join our collective, please write down your name and email on the chat and we will contact you. Today we have a special, I would say special, I'm from the San Diego area and Friendship Park was and is very important to me. And it's a historical location where you know, families that have been separated can come to the border, and even though they might not be able to fully hug and touch each other and kiss each other, they can do it through the holes in the 18-foot fence. And this has families from all over Latin America, not only Mexico, have come to this location. The panel will offer an overview of the efforts to save Friendship Park, and they have been working, Friends of Friendship Park have worked to maintain that and enhance access to this historical binational meeting place between San Diego and Tijuana. The Biden administration recently announced plans to move forward with Trump-era plans to build 30-foot border walls that made no provisions for these powerful reunions and will thus effectively shut down Friendship Park for good. Of course, Friends of Friendship Park have mobilized, have rallied in an effort to save this important place for the families that are separated. Our moderator is Catherine Romero Santos. She's an assistant professor of English and co-director of the Humanities Collective at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. Her research focuses on the ways in which playwrights and performance artists from the US-Mexico borderlands repurpose the works of William Shakespeare to tell stories of and for La Frontera. Catherine, take it away.
Gracias, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to the Zooming to the Border organizers for inviting us to participate in this event. We're really grateful for all the work that you've done to make this possible. I'd also like to thank my colleague Nancy Medrano of the Friends of Friendship Park for all of her work in coordinating and planning this event behind the scenes. And you'll see her in the chat posting more information throughout today's conversation. Laura so graciously introduced me, so I won't say much more about myself, but I will say that my own research on Borderlands poetry and performance is what brought me to Friendship Park and to Borderfield State Park, within which it's located. And this site has long been a site of activist art and resistance to the increasing presence of barriers demarcating the border between the United States and Mexico. So in addition to learning about its history, my research introduced me to the Friends of Friendship Park, who, as you'll learn today, are an incredible group of activists who have been advocating to maintain and increase access to the ways that Laura was describing. The objective of today's webinar is to offer you an overview of this site and to the multifaceted advocacy work that the Friends of Friendship Park have been doing to preserve it in the face of a constant layering and ratcheting up of border security measures that, as you heard, threaten the future of this important symbol of international friendship. By way of opening, I thought I would read one of the early artistic responses to this site that appears in the very first chapter of Gloria Anzaldua's foundational work, Borderlands La Frontera, which many of you are probably familiar with. In that opening chapter, she begins with a poem that she wrote upon visiting the site where Playas de Tijuana meets Imperial Beach in 1983. At that time, there was a chain link fence demarcating the border. And although it didn't extend all the way into the Pacific Ocean as it does today, that fence provoked a reaction in her that would become the beginning of her influential theorization of the border and the politics that shaped the lived experience of the borderlands. So I'm just going to read a selection to start. This poem is much longer. She writes, I press my hand to the steel curtain, chain link fence crowned with rolled barbed wire, rippling from the sea where Tijuana touches San Diego, unrolling over mountains and plains and deserts. This tortilla curtain turning into El Rio Grande, flowing down to the flatlands of the Magic Valley of South Texas, its mouth emptying into the Gulf. 1,950-mile-long open wound dividing a pueblo, a culture, running down the length of my body, staking fence rods in my flesh, splits me, me raja, me raja. I wanted to share that to offer a way of thinking about the material reality of this site and why it is so important for reflecting on the border as we know it today. So I would now like to invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves briefly. Their full bios are available on the flyer, but I wanted you to hear them in their own voices before we begin, and then we will move to a guided conversation. We'll leave time for questions at the end, so please let us know at any point if you have questions in the chat, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak if you so choose. So I'll turn things over first to John, and then we'll take it from there.
Hello, everyone. John Fanistill with the Friends of Friendship Park, and also a leader in the community called the Border Church, which gathers at Friendship Park.
Maria Teresa.
Hello, I'm Maria Teresa Fernandez. I'm a photographer, and I'm part of the Coalition of Friends of Friendship Park. And I've been documenting the border, especially border fence and Friendship Park, for the last 23 years.
Thank you. Is Tanya here? Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
Tanya.
here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm with the Friends of Friendship Park. I'm also involved with the Border Church. It's a service provided every Sunday, and I've assisted Friends of Friendship Park for the past 8 years as a volunteer. I love the community member, and I hope to continue all the advocacy that we've been doing so far. And that's pretty much what I do for Friendship Park, advocate for community members like myself who have been deported on the Mexican side.
Thank you. Pedro?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on here. My name is Pedro Rios, and I'm director of the American Friends Service Committee's U.S.-Mexico Border Program, and also a member of the Friends of Friendship Park.
Thank you. And Dan?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Daniel Watman. I'm the coordinator, founder of the Binational Friendship Garden of Native Plants, and a member of the Friends of Friendship Park.
Thank you. You'll have an opportunity to hear in more detail about the wonderful work that all 5 panelists do. So I'll start with John as the convener of the Friends of Friendship Park. John, could you tell us a little bit about the history of Friendship Park and the origins of the Friends of Friendship Park Coalition? Why is Friendship Park important?
Yeah, thank you, Katie, and thank you everyone for joining. I thought I'd just begin by confirming that we know where we're talking about with this quick drop down on Google Earth. We're talking about the location at the westernmost end of the US-Mexico border, overlooking the site where the border wall currently dives into the Pacific Ocean. Many of you will have seen images of that iconic wall. But for those of us who know and love the place, the true icon of Friendship Park is the monument which sits on the Mexican side. You can see in the foreground here the famous El Faro Tijuana, the lighthouse in Tijuana. But beneath that, in the shadow of that lighthouse, a little harder to make out, is a stone monument, which was the original boundary marker between Mexico and the United States, established at the end of the US-Mexico War. That's the monument or obelisk at the center of your screen. So this location was the place where the US-Mexico border was first demarcated. Some people call it the birthplace of the border. The Binational Commission that was prescribed by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. That Binational Commission met at this location and established this as the punto inicial of the border. And that was the first monument put in place by that commission. A subsequent commission then worked from east to west half a century later. And so that monument is now known as number 258, because that second commission working east to west put 258 monuments in place. But despite its number, which is number 258, it is the initial boundary marker and therefore a very historic location. We don't have time to summarize the long history of the park, but suffice it to say for over a century and a half, this was a wide open space. There was very little limitation to access on either side of the border. Even folks my age, I'm 60, and the people my age remember dragging their bicycle across a chain link fence to go and eat tacos in Tijuana for the afternoon and then coming back to the United States in the same fashion. So it's only in the last 20 years that the US government has really made a point of hardening this location on the border by seizing land from the state of California by eminent domain, by waiving laws to expedite the construction of border wall, and then by erecting more and more barriers to public access on the US side. Our Friends of Friendship Park Coalition really formed in 2005 and 2006 in response to that seizure of land, when the federal government made clear that it was intending to drive these border walls, with which we're also familiar now. When the federal government made clear it was intending to drive these walls all the way to the beach, and that they would wall off Friendship Park, we mobilized in opposition to that. We were unable, of course, to stop the construction of the walls, but we did secure a commitment on the part of US Border Patrol to provide limited access to the space between the walls, which over the last, especially 11 years since November of 2011, has afforded the public in the United States access to that primary wall that Laura mentioned in her introduction. That place where people are able to gather, or have been able to gather, to touch fingertips and to engage with friends, family, as well as celebrate public occasions and events and concerts, and host public events of many kinds, to gather at the Binational Garden, about which you'll hear more, to gather for communion in the Border Church, about which you'll hear more. So just to say that it's really our efforts to protect, preserve, and we hope someday to enhance public access on the US side. That is the purpose of our Friends of Friendship Park Coalition. The space is wide open on the Mexican side. We call it a perpetual fiesta. So there's always a party on the Mexican side. And if you come to San Diego and have time, go to Tijuana, you'll have a lot more fun on the Mexican side, I can promise you. And we like to say that, you know, the party's on the Mexican side, and someday we hope that our government will let us join the party. That's kind of what we talk about as the purpose of our Friends of Friendship Park Coalition. So thank you again for your interest and your solidarity.
Thank you, John. John briefly mentioned the Binational Friendship Garden. So I'd like to turn to Dan to ask about this garden, which he founded in 2007. Dan, could you tell us about the garden, why it's significant, what some of its history is, and perhaps what the current status is at the moment?
Yes, I can, and I actually have some pictures. Let's see. Make that bigger. So the Binational Friendship Garden of Native Plants was founded in 2007. And the idea was to create a space where people can make friends through the fence. It's inside Friendship Park, and also promote native flora of the region. And like I said, it was planted in March of 2007 as what we called a border encuentro event. This was a project that I started in the early or mid 2000s to try and get people to come together and make friends to the fence. So we look for common interest themes on both sides of the border, and do like salsa dancing lessons and yoga classes and poetry readings. And the garden was one of those border encuentro events where students from Kearney Mesa High School in San Diego got together with middle school in Tijuana students and planted the garden. And this is a shot in 2014 of the garden from above, obviously. And this is when shortly after we were allowed to actually expand the garden, which happened in 2012, 2013. And we made it into the current design, which are binational circles. And so, as you can see, there's half circle there on the Mexican side, and then it connects with the US side to make a full circle through the wall to kind of go along with the Friendship Park theme in general. There's where the monument is, there's a monument circle, a circular plaza that goes around the monument that John was mentioning. And so this goes along with kind of the circular theme at Friendship Park, and also for the garden itself, helps send the message that native flora doesn't have borders, or at least doesn't have political borders. So what's native on the Mexican side, obviously 3 or 4 feet north of there, or 10 feet north of there, is on the US side, it continues to be native. So, and this is a shot of some of the plants on the US side in 2019. So the garden was flourishing, doing really well. The access was restricted, but we were at least able to maintain it on the US side, and to kind of match everything that was happening on the Mexican side. On the Mexican side, things have, as the garden has grown, the community around it has grown. So it's become somewhat of a known spot on the Mexican side. And like I said, in 2019, the plants were doing great. And then in 2020, out of the blue, in 2019, there was that, like I said, restricted access allowed, and there was actually something written the end of 2019 from the then chief of San Diego Border Patrol, but without any prior notice at all, Border Patrol came in and just destroyed the garden on the US side. There was 150 some odd native plants. There was a 500-pound bench. There was a sign, heavy duty sign, pathways. They just made the whole thing disappear. And fortunately, word spread about that on social media and in the media, and that led to a public outcry, and Border Patrol responded and allowed us to replant, do a partial replant in the same month, January, at the end of January 2020. And even though the park was closed all throughout 2020, and has been closed ever since February of 2020, they were allowing us throughout 2020 and part of 2021 on a very restricted basis, and a small amount of volunteers to come in and maintain the garden, the new plants on the US side. But then in October of last year, they restricted all access. There's no access allowed. And so the garden was overrun, it got overrun with weeds, and is currently overrun with weeds. There's natives still in there, but so they're hard to make out, and the contrast is quite drastic from the U.S. side to the Mexican side. Here's a picture of us replanting in 2020, and this is of what it looked. This was on the U.S. side for the replanting, and then this is a fairly recent picture of what it looks like on the U.S. side. So if you have a good eye, you can make out a couple native plants in there. They're surviving, but it's in desperate need to be tended to, so that it looks like a garden again, and we can have a truly binational garden.
Thank you, Dan. I think Dan's remarks here show us the power of photography to document what's happening and the changes taking place. So I'd like to turn to Maria Teresa. You have photographed, as you mentioned at the outset, Friendship Park over the years. Why have you felt compelled to document the border? And could you talk a little bit about what you have observed through your lens?
Yeah, I started to photograph the border fence as a project for my photography class in 2000. And since then, I have been able to, let me, if I can share the image. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, it is one of my first images, and I found that the border fence was used by people as a canvas to express all kinds of feelings. And it was what I really attracted me, even though it was the main object of documenting that. At the same time, I was able to document the construction, the reconstruction, the installation of new pieces of the fence. And everything I found on the fence, was part of my project. Even, let me see if I can show you. Go to the other one. Well, that's, and little by little, the project started to grow. It was not just construction, reconstruction, objects. It was security. I used to see who was there, the border patrol agents, the installation of the concertina everywhere. It was also the murals, how people were expressing their feelings on the wall, on the border fence. Feelings of sadness, happiness. It was the government used the fence also for propaganda. It was religious events, everything. And then also the same migrants, when they arrived close to the fence, they used to write, I'm here, I'm from, soy de Guanajuato, soy de San Luis Potosí, te quiero mucho, Lupita. It was really a canvas of expression. And activists also used the border fence to express what they were going through. And I had the opportunity to see Michael Schnorr, who was one of the, who was part of the border art workshop, to intervene the fence with some of his installations, with beautiful installations that some of the students of Southwestern College used to help him to do that. And let me see, I don't know how to go back to this one. Little by little, the project started to grow. It started to grow, and it was, especially it was from the Mexican side, because it was very, very hard to go to the American side to get close to the fence. But there was once that I went to that area of Friendship Park, and I saw a sign that said, salsa classes. So I got close to that area, and I saw Dan. He had a binational salsa class. And then there was John also. There was I don't know if it was a kind of a march, or it was a kind of that he had the opportunity to serve communion in that area. And since then, I became part of that area going there every weekend. I try to go every week, and sometimes it's hard, but because I have commitments. And Friendship Park has become part of my life project, of photo life project. And I hope it won't, finish right now. And I have seen the fence growing in length, in height. It has been reproducing into fences, in some places 3 fences. And I hope someday I will be able to document the fall of this, the death of this object. And just being there, as you say, as you asked me, is what can I see through my lens? It's not just through my lens, but just to be part of the moment of the families when they arrive there. Everything evokes my senses. It's not my sight. It's not just my ears. When I listen to them, I have an experience that there was that man that came from the north of California, and he was trying to see his parents and his family, because his brother and his sister was there too, but the park was closed at that moment. I don't know, there was an investigation going on and they didn't open the park, and he was very, very sad. But all of a sudden someone came and said, yes, the park is going to be open. And the moment that we were entering the park, I listened to the sound of the mother shouting to him, Toñito, Toñito. It was something that is still in my ears, that I cannot forget that sound of the mother seeing his son for the first time after 12 years, not seeing him. At the moment that they went close, they were talking, and it's not that I want to listen what they are saying, but sometimes by just being there, I have the opportunity to listen to them. And the brother of Toñito was in the other side, and they were trying to measure themselves. I'm taller than you are. No, I'm taller than you are. Look, and they were close to the fence measuring, because he left his brother when he was a baby. He was a little boy. And right now they were kind of, and that kind of thing is just kind of, they touch my heart. They touch my whole body. And I thought maybe with time, my skin will get very, very thick, and I won't feel as much as I was feeling. With age, it's worse, I think. So my skin is thinner and thinner, and I feel more and more. The other day, I heard that it was from far away right now, that she couldn't be close to her mom. It was Cecilia from Phoenix. She came, and at the moment that the mother appeared in front, in the Mexican side, the way she said, "Mama, Mama," it just kind of, there is no, I don't know, the Border Patrol, even though they are close, they should listen to that. They should listen to, they should understand what's happening in this place. The other day too, I mean, that's when the park was open, there was that girl that used to take her baby it was 3 years that she was taking him to the park. Once, I mean, she took him as a baby, and then the kid started to walk, and he was walking all around the park. And I told the mother, "I'm going to take care of him. You just talk to your husband over there." And I was kind of taking care of the little kid. At the end, when the park was almost, the father told me, "Maria, please come close to the fence." I went close to the fence, and he told me, "Maria, I'm jealous of you." So, and I didn't know how to react to that. He said, "Why?" "Because you can touch him, you can kiss him, you can hug him, and I can't." So that kind of little things is just, I cannot, I mean, it's not my eyes that I see, it's just all those little details that park is important. And it's not that I can tell details and histories and stories, but what we need to know, what is their opinion. Quite, they think about the park, and I have something that I want to write. I want to read. Hola, mi nombre es Diana. El Friendship Park es el lugar donde se cumple el deseo de mis padres y mis hermanos de poder verme y yo verlos a ellos. A través de esa valla que nos separa, pero que al mismo tiempo nos hace sentir que estamos tan cerca y que la familia está completa de nuevo. Donde los ojos de mi madre se llenan de lágrimas al tocar tan solo mi dedo. El lugar donde puedo sentir el aroma de mi padre y donde mi hermana pone su pelo junto a la valla para que yo ponga mi perfume en él y conservar mi aroma unas horas más después de despedirme. Es el lugar donde mi corazón se siente completo, aunque sea unas cuantas horas. Somos cientos de familias los que vivimos esas lágrimas de tristeza y alegría en ese único lugar donde podemos sentirnos en familia. I think we need to know more about their opinions and tell the Border Patrol about what they feel and the importance of this beautiful and powerful place.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. Both your words and the letter that you just read testify to the multisensory nature of the gatherings that Friendship Park can enable. I know that some folks were asking if you could zoom in on the photos, but maybe that's something that we can share at the end if we have time. I know that was, you were struggling maybe to zoom in entirely, but we also have some photographs that we might be able to direct folks to on the website. Just to pause very briefly, I know that there are some questions in the chat and we'll make sure to answer those questions at the end. So we are keeping track along the way, and hopefully some of your questions may be answered as we move along and get into detail. So I'd like to turn things over to Pedro and to ask him if he could situate Friendship Park within shifting border policies and policing.
Sure, thank you so much, Catherine. And it's a pleasure to be here and to join this space and to share it with so many of you. So Friendship Park represents a microcosm of the policing practices under a decades-long militarization process of the US-Mexico border. Most policies affecting border communities have been put in place without any sensible consultation process with those who are most impacted. And that's clearly been the case at Friendship Park for several decades. So the imposition of these policies and practices have been detrimental to how border community members experience their quality of life. And of course, Friendship Park is no exception. In what you described at the beginning, Catherine, as a ratcheting effect, and what others with the Friends of Friendship Park have described, these restrictions limit access, and they come across as being arbitrary and sometimes even retaliatory. Again, without any process of consulting those who use the park. The history and framing of Friendship Park gets told officially from the point of view of those who execute the rules of how one gets to experience Friendship Park. In this case, when Border Patrol defines how one should experience Friendship Park, then they also set forth the rules of interaction. These commonly mean access is reduced to when it's operationally safe, according to using their militaristic vocabulary, and that Border Patrol will make this determination. No one ever gets to know the logic behind this decision of when it's operationally safe for one to use the park. So let me share one example. It used to be possible to freely take a camera and video record in the area known as the enforcement zone. This is a space between the primary and the secondary border barriers. The video testimonies documented beautiful and intimate interactions of people seeing each other across the primary border wall, just the way that Maria Teresa described. Sometimes families were reuniting for the first time in years. These experiences brought out the best of human relationships that belie the need for so much enforcement. These interactions then undermine the notion that border walls, increased surveillance of the area, and increased footprint of border agents were a necessary response to a dangerous area, as Border Patrol will qualify Friendship Park. The storyline doesn't sit well with an agency that increasingly looks to beef up its budget for more agents and more tools that project a harder defensive posture. In fact, in Border Patrol's most recent challenge coin for the San Diego sector, and this is as recently as last month, it showcases concertina wire that describes it as a, quote, symbolizing the importance of a new way of thinking about border security in San Diego. And I'll put a link to that where you can see the challenge coin. So in part, the challenge to gain access to Friendship Park has been a question of who gets to tell the narrative and how that narrative is framed. Again, this is how Friendship Park becomes a microcosm for the borderlands. Border walls have destroyed sensitive ecosystems in Arizona that were the origin stories of indigenous peoples. In Texas, border walls have divided ancestral lands and uprooted those living for generations in the affected areas. And all across the border, border walls push people to dangerous crossing routes, including attempting to climb the border walls, which has resulted in thousands of deaths over the years. At Friendship Park, Border Patrol have told us that people in Mexico will throw rocks at us, that there is rampant drug smuggling happening between the primary border wall. They've closed off access, saying people have tossed soccer balls filled with heroin over the primary border wall. And this is something that they told us at a meeting many years ago, about a decade ago or so. They've also said that computer chips with sensitive information are hidden between the bologna and cheese and so-called narco tortas pass through the mesh fence. There has been no evidence of that, but still they use these excuses as a way to close off access and slowly limit how one can experience in a sensible and a humane way Friendship Park. What we know is that experiencing Friendship Park in its full humanity should be a priority, and that can only be accomplished when full access to Friendship Park for all is possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pedro. I'd like to bring John back in very briefly to tell us about Border Church, and then we'll bring Tanya in to talk about her experiences with Border Church. So John, what is Border Church? What is its mission and who participates in it?
Yeah, the Border Church, La Iglesia Fronteriza, is a community of people that gather for the Christian sacrament of communion on both sides of the border. We say our mission is to break bread across the border. Our dream is someday to convert the border wall and to turn it into the table of the Lord. The first time I served communion at Friendship Park, it was the summer of 2008. At this time, Border Patrol and US authorities were beginning to build the barriers across the park. And so for about 6 months, from August of 2008 to February of 2009, our community trespassed onto federal property. And during those 6 months, we were able to share the elements of communion, the bread and the cup, through the border wall. We were eating from one loaf, one bread. We were sharing, drinking one cup. The park was closed forcibly in 2009 and remained closed through to 2011. But when, after completing the construction of the walls, they afforded modest access to Friendship Park, beginning in November 2011, we began to return to the US side, and over the years to celebrate communion. And our goal at that time was simply, it was a small group of us across many years. Our goal was to accompany, we called our work of acompañamiento, and the word in Spanish has within it this notion of breaking bread, to acompañar, to share the pan del día con la gente. And our goal is to accompany the families and the other people who are gathering at the park, to stand alongside them and to make clear that they were beloved children of God. That was our hope. An entire community has grown up on the Mexican side of the wall, and it is the real heart and soul of the Border Church, the team that gathers every Sunday, that serves communion to a large gathering on the Mexican side and serves a meal at the close of its service. And a group of people on the US side, we continue to visit the park each Sunday to stand in what we call sacramental solidarity with our friends in Mexico. So it's a community to which all are welcome. Es una mesa abierta, and it's a privilege to have been a part of it.
Thank you so much, John. Tanya, you mentioned when you introduced yourself at the outset that you started attending Border Church after you had been deported and as a means of finding connection. So could you tell us about what Border Church has meant to you, what kinds of connection it did provide? And then maybe you can tell us about what kinds of services you've been able to offer to people who find themselves in a similar position as yours.
Well, I want to start a little bit with saying after my deportation back in 2010, moving into playas as I arrived at the beach one day trying to get reception there, I met these wonderful people there that all these events and visits that, you know, I used to do there back at the time. And because of my depression and mainly just, you know, trying to stick around, I came with Border Church. Border Church is a place where it gives you a lot of stability. It gives you that hope. It gives you that assistance, like John said, the companionship and the care. And I've volunteered there for a while, and now I volunteer for the Friends of Friendship Park. I've helped with the bookkeeping, and it means a lot because throughout the years of my deportation, I didn't have like another place to actually like feel that you belong somewhere. You know, I was deported when I was 24, and most of us childhood arrivals who you know, enter the country to the US at a young age and then they get deported. This place has a meaning, you know, because you want to see. So to me, it means a lot because just thinking that there's going to be a 30-feet wall and that it's going to cover that view that gives you like that hope, it makes me want to just push more and do more for these types of events. And I think Border Church is one of the events that makes you, like John said, it gives you, you know, that worship of God, that spiritual emotion of continuing in life. So I think it just means so much, all the services that we still continue doing, like, you know, companioning the rest, you know, following this chain that sadly we go through, you know, us migrants, people who have, you know, plead violence. This place it soothes your soul. It calms you in so many ways. It has done it to me. They've adopted me there after volunteering for so long. They give you this continual progress, you know, for your well-being, and not just, you know, the spiritual aspect, but just any other information that you need. You know, they connect you with other organizations. We have a variety, and I also include Friends of Friendship Park. We have a variety of connections with other people and all these services that we provide. I think the most important one to me so far has been the garden, but mainly Border Church has a big meaning because that spiritual words that they give you and the continuance of trying to help you heal means just your whole life, you know, especially like I said, for us deported who have this hope of going back and being back with your families, you know, trying to pursue that, just that dream, you know, that you've had since, you know, for me, being in the US is just, my dream was always being there with my family together. So I think it brings that unity of trying to get trying to get myself back home. So just being there makes me feel like home. And what was your other question?
Are there specific services that you have been able to offer to people who have also been deported and find themselves in a similar position as yours?
Yeah, actually, when we get groups and then when we have like people who actually just arrive there on the weekends or even throughout the week, like I get to visit there throughout the week since I live here in Playas de Tijuana on the Mexican side. I get to see so many people that, you know, are just asking a question or just, you know, having that thought of like, when they're at the wall, you know, they have so many questions for themselves, you know, and just being there and attending it and, you know, having that just having that idea of being here and knowing that all these people like myself are there just makes me want to be there, and knowing that all this that we feel and all these questions that we have, you know, makes me want to continue being there. And those services are just like John said, we give them companionship. We make sure they're going to shelters, you know, they know where these places are located, you know, how they can do their procedures. we actually sometimes take them there. There's also other pastors here on the Mexican side who contribute with all that. And we give, in my point, I give my experience, I give the way I did my things. You know, I also have my daughter in the US that I went through with child custody. So I let them know how I did that. You know, they ask so many questions like, where can I go? How can I do this? And I think those little simple things are the best services you could give to these people. Worship, companionship, peace, transformation, you know, knowing that we're here binationally as an international friendship. It's more than just a service, it's a hope of life. And I think that's like the most important thing that we want to continue doing. And I think that's the biggest thing we need to see from this place, is a historic place of life that needs to maintain. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, Tanya. This is such important work. As you've probably been hearing from our panelists, access to Friendship Park on the US side has changed quite radically in recent years. And even more recent developments have threatened the future of this binational meeting place. So I'd like to invite the panelists to tell us some more about these recent developments and why they're so concerning. What is the future of Friendship Park?
If it's okay, I'll start, and then my
Please.
colleagues can begin. So I think it's important to note that when President Biden took office, he signed an executive order stating that all border wall projects would be suspending pending further review. That was during the first week of his administration. One of those projects was the replacement walls at Friendship Park. In late May, so several months ago, we learned that there had been a notice posted by the Department of Homeland Security that the replacement wall project would continue at Friendship Park. We held a meeting with the Border Patrol on June 17th with the purpose of understanding and learning more about the scope, about what the project entailed, and what the impact it would have to Friendship Park. At that meeting, we learned that for the primary border wall, about 90% of its design had been completed, and for the secondary border wall, about 60 or 70% had been completed. However, within that conversation, we also learned that Border Patrol had not been contemplating including an access gate as it currently exists now at the secondary border wall. And this access gate is what allows people to arrive and to spend time in between the primary and the secondary border wall, the space known as the enforcement zone. That raised alarms for us, and we suggested that without that access gate, that there would be a lot of consternation amongst the general public and organizations that use Friendship Park as they have for decades. At that meeting, we were promised that we would have schematics of their projects by the beginning of the month of July. The first week passed and we did not receive those schematics. And it was at that time that we chose to make this campaign much more public, to draw attention to the fact that Border Patrol was intending to significantly alter the experience that one would have at Friendship Park with the construction and building of two 30-foot border walls that were designed during the Trump era. So essentially, under President Biden, the border walls that were coming into Friendship Park would resemble and would take on the design that President Trump had promoted throughout his campaign. Our organizing led to every single policymaker that counts as Friendship Park within their district to sign or write a letter in support of our efforts. We had the support of both senators of the state of California, as well as a number of members of Congress that signed onto a letter that was spearheaded by Congressman Juan Vargas. And along with many of you and many others who signed petitions calling for the drawing attention of this, the Marcha de Silencio events that take place almost every Sunday on the ground continue to move forward, again, with the idea of drawing attention to the disastrous concept of two 30-foot border walls going into the space, and the possibility that access would no longer be possible for Friendship Park. We hosted a rally and vigil outside of the San Diego Border Patrol sector headquarters, and also held the second meeting on July 27th with the Border Patrol. It was at that time that they told us that they would have further news for us last Friday, a week from tomorrow, a week ago tomorrow, that they would have news to us about our request to suspend this project for 120 days, pending more authentic consultation process with many stakeholders in the San Diego and greater community, so that we could have what we've wanted, which is, what do people in San Diego and beyond want? What would they like to see at Friendship Park? Because this consultation process really has never truly occurred. This pause, we believe the 100-day pause would be in effect an opportunity to hear from constituents and from various stakeholder sectors throughout the community. And we learned on August 4th that the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, which is the parent agency of the Border Patrol, Chris Magnus, did in fact announce a pause on the construction in order to engage with community members and community leaders. We don't know, and maybe others can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't know for how long that pause is supposed to be implemented for. However, we are moving forward as a Friends of Friendship Park in organizing a summit of sorts where stakeholders will get together. This will take place in early or mid-September, where an opportunity for people to provide their opinions about what they would like to see at Friendship Park can actually take place. And I'll let others chime in as well. I might be a little fuzzy in the latter part of the details.
Thank you so much. John, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Pedro summarized very well. We are convening these stakeholders in early September. We have not yet heard whether Border Patrol will join that conversation or whether they'll propose an alternate scenario for what they call engaging with the community. So we appreciate our advocacy ask these days is that whoever is speaking to Border Patrol, Customs Border Protection, that they would advocate that those officials join the process that the community is launching to ensure that community concerns are included in their plans moving forward.
Thank you. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add? Well, I'm sure that members of the audience are eager to know how they can help to raise awareness of Friendship Park and to join our efforts to maintain and enhance access. So what are some things that folks in the audience can do right now? If you've been watching the chat, Nancy Medrano has been posting links, but maybe Dan can elaborate on some of those actions that you can take if you would like to support Friendship Park.
Sure, yeah, well, you'll see it in a second at our website where there's a list of different actions that we're taking now that you can take part in either locally or remotely. And I wanted to mention or kind of highlight that we have a petition right now to asking Biden not to continue Trump's 30-foot wall plan. I live right next to Friendship Park, and right before the halt in January of 2021, they actually started 30-foot wall construction, and it was halted and stopped. And as Pedro was saying, supposedly for stakeholder consultation, and now they were going to go ahead with it anyway after no consultation for 18 months, and now it's been paused again. So we really need to keep the pressure on in order to make sure that they don't they don't go ahead with the plan that they have, they being the Department of Homeland Security, and that they actually engage in genuine consultation with the community. So you can sign our petition. I think Nancy's going to put that in the chat. And if you want to be even more involved, you can send me or Nancy an email, and we can put you on the volunteer team list. We meet by Zoom every Wednesday, and we make plans for outreach events and collaboration. We talk about social media strategy and other outreach events, sometimes Zoom events, sometimes virtual events. And so there's a lot of ways you can get involved and help out. So one of the main things that our upcoming events is our 51st anniversary. On the Mexican side, it's going to be, like John was saying at the beginning, a huge fiesta. We're going to have some rock bands, very famous rock bands here on the Mexican side. And on the US side, there's not going to be anyone, and there's going to be empty chairs. And John can talk about that a little bit more as far as what the empty chair thing is about on the US side.
I want to say a little bit about Border Church. Border Church, we meet every Sunday from 11 to 3. You guys could always join us Facebook Live at 1 p.m. or also gather around with us here on the Mexican side in Playas de Tijuana. We start off with setting up the whole service for our binational service on Sundays, and there's a lot of hands-on to do, volunteering, and then you find out with a lot of different variety of stories from different migrants who maybe you want to always, care to help or seek any assistance. That there's always something that comes up there besides our event. And like Danny said, our Friendship Park anniversary coming up, and you always could send me an email. I'll put my email here for any other information on the Border Church. And you could always see us on Facebook Live, by the way, on Sundays at 1.
Yeah, and thank you. The chairs, if you'd like to sponsor a chair, we're going to line the US side of the park with empty chairs. Each chair will have a name on it. Could be your own name or the name of an organization reserved for. And again, we'll capture aerial images, video images, and still photos to dramatize that there is this public concert on the Mexican side, and that on the US side, a large number of people who would like to, who wish they could participate. So I'll put that's been in the chat a few times, but here it is again, in case you'd like to sponsor a chair in the name of yourself or a loved one or an organization that you'd like to be represented on that day, which is next Saturday, August 20th.
Thank you all so much for outlining those ways that folks can get involved. And I'll just say that as somebody who lives all the way over here in San Antonio, it is possible to get involved remotely. So I hope that you will take them up on their offer to join them in this important fight. I saw that there are some questions in the chat. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to put more in the chat or to raise your hand to speak. I know that Yolanda has had a few comments and questions. I don't know if Yolanda, you want to follow up on any of them or ask them. I see that some have been answered, but I would like to invite you to unmute if you'd like to join us.
Yes, I would. I'd just like to say 2 things, and then if it's possible, if it can be discussed. One is that I read an article on the internet that this Latino guy that was suffering from bipolar disorder, which is what I have, he tried all kinds of treatment, medicine, and therapy, and nothing helped. And he got involved with Friendship Park and helped him. He overcame his bipolar disorder. The other thing is that during the elections for between Trump and Biden, I read the newspapers, and I've also found out from other news that at the time they said that 35 or 37% of the Hispanic population in Texas voted for Trump. And then I read that it was 50% of the Hispanic population in Texas that voted for Trump. So I just wrote in the chat that I know that the South was stolen from Mexico after the Alamo, which the fight for the Mexican people was against slavery and for Texas to remain part of Mexico. And I think that has got a lot to do with the oppression and the suffering that the Mexican American people in this country have had to live with, including myself. And I would like to know why those Hispanics in Texas voted for Trump. What are the reasons that are moving this anti-document, anti-friendship park motion forward? And I don't know how to find that out. I have some friends on Facebook who are from Texas, but I think if we could figure that out, that might offer an alternative to how we could organize. The other thing is, I've heard on Tribune de Puebla 30 feet walls, and I really, they were set up for the person at times to die because they fall automatically because of the technology involved. So I just encourage people that started the circle in the wall to figure out how technology works. I know I read an article in Cutting Edge Capitalism, something or other, written by Jim Davis, had 12 articles by different authors from throughout the world in the United States, and it said that our DNA is used in the computers. So I don't know if those women in Texas or men, I don't know what they've been through, but I think it's horrible. I think that was, and also the lies that it was started by Pat Nixon. I'm glad you guys are clearing that up, but those are just some of the ideas and the suggestions that I have.
Thank you so much. Does anyone care to respond? And I think that Yolanda was touching on a few issues that I know that Pedro touched on in his remarks, and why, why is it that the 30-foot walls are so troubling, really, right? It's not just their height, right, but what they signify in terms of the future of border security in this country.
I can share a few thoughts about that, and I'll be really quick. And I think obviously the symbolism of the border walls tell their own story, and I think that when Donald Trump was parading these and the construction of the models and prototypes that he had built in San Diego County facing Mexico were symbolisms of rejection, of hate, of closing the doors. But beyond the symbolism, I think the structural presence at Friendship Park would completely change the visibility for both people who are in Mexico, but also people who are in the US. So they will have a dramatic effect of changing the visual landscape of Friendship Park. And then the last point I want to address in the comments that Yolanda made is that I was in a meeting back in June of 2019 with former Chief Rodney Scott, who stated that the Border Patrol conducted psychological field studies to determine at what height a normal person would become disoriented while attempting to scale the border wall. And that height was normally around 18 to 20 feet. So if you take that into consideration, someone who is attempting to scale a 30-foot border wall is likely to get stuck, fall off, injure themselves, and die. And we've seen a 5 times increase in dramatic serious injuries here in San Diego County, as well as an increased number of deaths because of people that have fallen as a result of attempting to scale the 30-foot border wall.
Thank you. There was another question in the chat earlier from David about the Binational Garden. And I believe the question for Dan was, did Border Patrol give an excuse or rationale for destroying the garden?
Sort of. Immediately the response was that it was for security purposes that the border had been breached, but it turns out that the border wall was breached. It was cut, and the order was to trim the plants around that area where the border wall was cut and fix the border wall. Just a few plants that were kind of in the way, I guess. But instead of doing that, someone came in and someone that had enough authority to do this came in and just destroyed the garden completely. And there was no rationale for that. They said it was a mistake.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions that they would like to ask the panelists, or anything that the panelists would like to add to the conversation?
I can share real quick just a couple of images. Again, I know some of you are familiar with this space, but some perhaps not quite so much. And so I thought it might be helpful for everyone to see a couple of images. Pedro mentioned the profound effect that this would have on the visibility. And of course, most people then would think about the US side, but I just want to show this very quick, just a few seconds clip of the Mexican side of Friendship Park, which is a very vital space. Thousands of people circulate through the space every weekend at Playas de Tijuana. And there's a lookout above the bathrooms at Friendship Park, El Parque de la Amistad de Lao Mexicano, that is called El Mirador, the lookout. From that lookout, you can see all the way north to downtown San Diego and to peninsula of Point Loma. And on a clear day, you can see all the way up the Southern California coastline. And these proposed 30-foot walls would eliminate that view for the public in Mexico looking north into the United States. And so here's just a glimpse of the view from the Mexican side. This is the busy plaza, and the camera will spin around to show the view north from the Mexican side of Friendship Park.
This is the Mexican side.
So that right there is the view north into the United States that would be eliminated by, these walls are currently 18 feet. So you have to almost double the height. The new walls would reach almost to the top of the screen that you're looking at here, and would eliminate views into the United States. On the US side, meanwhile, the approach to the park, these bollard style walls, if you're right perpendicular to them, you can see through them, but even at a slight angle, it looks like a solid wall, which means that people approaching Friendship Park, you come into the park from the east, as they look to the west toward the beach, they would no longer see into Friendship Park. Their perception would be that it is in fact a solid wall. And only if they climbed all the way up onto Monument Mesa would they even realize that there's anything like space between the walls that might be accessible to the public.
Thank you,
I just
John.
want to add something. Could I
Please.
add? Yeah, I think the idea of building a 30-foot fence in that park is inhumane. They don't have a memory of what is that place. They don't know the history of the place. And besides, it's just that they don't know what they are doing, because that's for security. It is not for security, because the primary fence is 19 foot on, and then they will have a 30 foot in front of Friendship Park, then go 30 foot in down the slope, and then it will find the one that is in the beach, and which is 19 foot tall. So there is no why right there. It's just to impress the Mexican side, to impress the migrants, or just to compete with the smugglers, creating new ways of crossing, new changos, new way of cutting the back. I don't know what is the idea of doing. That's just cruel. It's inhumane for me. There is no reason.
Laura, I think you had your hand up before. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I know you were giving a pause of what, 90 or 120 days, and what's going to happen after that? I guess we don't know, but what kind of, besides celebrating the 51st anniversary of Friendship Park, are there anything else we can do or people can do?
Yeah, I'll address that. We requested a 120-day pause, which would be 4 months. But Border Patrol, when they announced their pause, did not say how long a pause they were planning. So we're waiting to hear from them.
Okay.
We don't know if they're talking about a week or 2 weeks. We are planning this Stakeholder Summit, we're calling it, in early September, because with our long work and relationships, we are able to convene the stakeholders in the area. And we're hoping that Border Patrol will agree to participate in the process that we are designing. So as I mentioned earlier, right now our ask is that Border Patrol would pause until they participate in our stakeholder conversation. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking. These funds were allocated by Congress in fiscal year 2018, and they have to be dispersed by September 30th of this year. Okay. So Border Patrol is going to disperse those funds to contractors in one way or another by the end of September. That doesn't mean the work has to be finished, but they have to disperse contracts. So the clock is really, it's really the next 7 weeks will determine whether Border Patrol will accommodate designs that are specific to this location and will include elements that come from the community who uses the park, and that then perhaps would disperse monies to contractors for the purpose of creating a park that would in fact enhance public access rather than effectively eliminate it. So it's the next 7 weeks of pushing and back and forth. We are the stakeholders. If you know folks in San Diego who would like to participate in that process, we'll be accepting soon nominations for people who would participate in the Stakeholder Summit. And these should be people with a long history of demonstrated knowledge of the area and of the park.
Thank you.
I see that we're coming up on 4:15, so I'm mindful of the time, and I thank you all for spending this much time with us. I would like to thank the Zooming to the Border organizers for inviting us to participate in this series. I would like to thank the panelists for sharing their incredible experiences and insights and the history of their really important action. And by way of closing, I wanted to return to Gloria Anzaldúa and her poem, and especially because it reminds me of what Maria Teresa was expressing in her hope that she will someday be able to document the dismantling of these walls. So at the close of her poem, Anzaldúa writes, "The land was Mexican once, was Indian always, and is, and will be again." So thank you all for your time and for your questions and your interest. More information is available at friendshippark.org, and we hope that we'll see you again soon.